Today I made face-to-face with a client from a country with a rather poor passport. He is currently living in a country that will probably never grant him citizenship, or if it does, it will take him more than 10 years to obtain it. The residency he has is indeed useful for traveling to other countries. He holds a residency permit in the Schengen area, and if you have a Schengen residency, you can go, for example, to Mexico or other Latin American countries, or sometimes even to some Eastern European countries that are not in the EU, simply because you hold that Schengen residency permit. But he asked me, I want to have other passport. This country where I am now probably won't naturalize me, and the requirements for naturalization are enormous, are huge. Where can I go? What I recommend if you are in a hurry to travel somewhere, if you are in a hurry to have a different recognition, if you need to open a bank account in another country and you have a terrible passport, we are talking about Nigerian, Indian, Pakistani, Syrian passport, or something slightly better but still not great like Ecuadorian, Bolivian, Cuban or Venezuelan. If you find yourself restricted, unable to go anywhere without a visa, and applying for one is a horrible process that will give you endless headaches, my recommendation remains the Caribbean or Turkey. With the Caribbean, you gain access to the Schengen area right now, okay? Access to the United Kingdom in others, and you simply get a better passport. You will still have been born in Nigeria, for example, or in India, or in any of these countries, so you will still be recognized as someone from that country, but with a much better passport. Now you can start traveling to more developed countries, and I would say that if you come from Africa, if you are African, and you get a Caribbean passport, many people will assume you are from the Caribbean, because the general image that many have of the Caribbean is of people who look physically similar to those from Africa. So visually speaking, when an immigration officer sees your passport, sees you, or even just from the general perception people have in the country you arrive in, you will likely receive a fairly favorable reception. It will not be fast, you are not going to get it in 45 days, nor in 60 days like Sao Tome and Principe or Vanuatu. It will take you at least 10 months, and in some cases up to 24 months. But it is still the fastest way to improve your ability to travel worldwide. The only thing to keep in mind are the possible short to medium term restrictions we might face when it comes to freedom of movement or applying for residency in other countries. Now, if you also want something extra, as my client does, he wants a top tier passport, EU citizenship, something that allows him to live in multiple countries and travel practically anywhere. He has a huge family owned business that has been in their hands for years, and he wants to be able to move anywhere at any time to meet clients, travel to the US, to Australia, Russia, Canada, China. What I recommended was living in Spain for 2 years, because he can apply for citizenship after 2 years due to being born in a country with Ibero-American treaties. But of course, after doing the math, the wealth tax and the large fortune tax would take a huge amount he was not willing to pay during those 2 years and the additional year for processing time. In that case, he decided to go for Portugal's golden visa. This golden visa is very useful because you don't need to live in Portugal. This particular client needs to live in the Schengen area for business reasons at least 6 months a year. If he already spent 6 months a year in one country like Italy, he could naturalize there, but it would take too long and he would have to learn a fairly complicated language, so in general it would not work well for him. Meanwhile, he can naturalize in Portugal while spending only 2 or 3 weeks a year there. He invested 500,000 euros in a fund, wait for the golden visa to be approved, which takes around 2 or 3 years. Right now, he has already this Schengen residency, so he can do this, so he is waiting for the citizenship. Once you apply for the golden visa, the clock for naturalization starts ticking, and if you are from a weak passport country, you must know that these European countries, the ones you want to grant you citizenship, will not naturalize you as easily as they would as an American. So don't expect them to grant you citizenship in 5 years without doing anything. You need to establish real ties with the country apart from the golden visa. In addition to spending 2 or 3 weeks a year in Portugal, I would recommend buying property there, opening a Portuguese bank account, creating real links with the country, even if you live elsewhere. This way you have the chance to naturalize after 5 years and obtain that EU passport. And not only that, you also get the golden visa. So if Saint Kitts or any Caribbean citizenship loses Schengen access, you will still keep it thanks to your Portuguese golden visa. Overall, what you want is the fastest path to citizenship, and that is Portugal. We have other EU countries that would be willing to naturalize you if you invest tens of millions locally, hire local people, and provide excellent conditions. It's not short, it's not easy, but with a good project and the right connections, we can achieve this in countries like Austria, Hungary, Greece, Slovakia, or Slovenia. Of course, I'm the first to admit that the EU is in decline. and you already know I'm anti-EU, but depending on each person, even knowing this, they may still have their own priorities or goals and want to do it anyway, because what they had before was even worse and made everything related to their passport more difficult. And if you want even more diversification, this client already has Schengen residency, he has the Portuguese Golden Visa, and is considering a Caribbean passport. He is also considering Turkish citizenship, although he is not very convinced because Turkey is a Muslim country and his religion doesn't get along well with Islam. That depends on him. If you are Muslim, you might like Turkey. I do recommend it to some clients who want more diversification while investing in real estate. But it also takes time. Obtaining Turkish citizenship takes around a year, in some cases a year and a half, and it is no longer as easy as it once was. Now they require many documents. Sometimes they even double check everything. Your criminal records, all your paperwork. To get Turkish citizenship, it is no longer enough to buy property and wait 3 months. On top of all this client asks me about citizenship by exception in Eastern Europe, outside the EU, in Latin America, in EU countries, but unfortunately, for people with very weak passports, they will almost always reject your application to enter any citizenship by exception program unless you are a unique profile. We can try, of course. For example, suppose you apply for a citizenship by exception in a country like Georgia, set up a company there, hire employees, invest in the country, and so on. Unless you have powerful contacts or a very well-connected local agent, they will not actually grant you citizenship by exception. You would have to learn the language, live there the required time, because simple, they don't want naturalized people like you. They don't want to naturalize people from your country. It is sad, but it's how some nations operate. If they see someone applying with a nationality considered weak, they say directly no. They don't want people from your country, or even they don't want people who look like you. In some cases, even if you have a Spanish passport like me, if you were born in Bolivia, to them you are Bolivian. Even if you have a Canadian passport, your birth certificate says Bolivia, your name is Bolivian, your appearance too, and they simply don't want Bolivians. That ethnic group or origin doesn't interest them. Of course, this is just an example. I said Bolivia because it is one of the few Spanish-speaking countries without Schengen access. I could have said Cuba, Ecuador, or the Dominican Republic. Don't take it personally. Don't think this person is racist, this country is horrible. It is simply how some governments operate. They don't want to risk their reputation by admitting people who, in their view, could cause problems. So to sum up, getting the Portuguese Golden Visa, getting the St. Kitts and Nevis or any other Caribbean citizenship if you need it, or Turkish citizenship if it suits to you, and you can add a Latin American residency can also help you a lot. I know many people with terrible passports who are getting Mexican, Panamanian and Paraguayan residency. It helps. You can get a Schengen visa or you can get the Portuguese Golden Visa and then fly visa free to Mexico and get residency there. That is one more country in your portfolio. You could also have a child in one of these countries. You can give birth in Mexico and the process there is quite straightforward, although there can be some reasons when it comes to granting citizenship. If you give birth in Mexico or your wife or partner does, you will obtain citizenship in just 2 years and your child gets it immediately. So if you and your partner are from India or any other country with a very weak passport and you fly to Mexico and give birth there, the child will be Mexican even though they are of Indian descent. They will look Indian, but they were born in Mexico and therefore are Mexican citizens. This is extremely useful for any family with weak passports. Because, for example, in Argentina you can naturalize very quickly, in Brazil you can naturalize after 1 year, in Mexico after 2 years. You get a solid passport in 2 years and give your child a second strong passport from day one, whereas with the original passport they would face many more difficulties. Also, you give them the opportunity to apply for Spanish citizenship later on, so you are covering all possible bases. On the other hand, another strategy I have implemented for people with passports that are terrible in both mobility and reputation is to acquire official Caribbean programs or Turkish citizenship or another that slightly improves reputation and then enter one by exception, such as Serbia, such as Albania, such as Montenegro, as long as they are not criminals, have solid funds, can prove absolutely everything, and once they get this, they already have a very good reputation. But they could even improve further to an EU country like Austria, Hungary, Greece, Slovakia, Slovenia, and some others, if they make a donation or an interesting investment and indirectly or indirectly help the country. This can be done. It isn't for everyone. You need money, and above all, you must not be sanctioned or have a tainted record. We do the same for Russian-speaking citizens, Chinese citizens, or other not so great citizenships. And this essentially is what I recommend if you have a very limited passport. I invite you to fill out the form, let's review it together and see what we can do.